The universe had rules, and humanity broke them first. For eons, the Galactic Federation waged war as one might solve an equation, precise, elegant, devoid of rage or rhythm, to the vire. Cephalopod tacticians who calculated victory through telepathic consensus. Conflict was a symphony of probabilities. The insectoid Cathari treated it as sacred geometry. Even the savage Xerax who ate their enemies' hearts did so with ritualistic predictability. War was a science, a prayer, a feast, but never an impulse. Then came the humans. The Federation observed them as one might a virus, fascinated, wary. Their history was a chronicle of contradictions. Poets who built bombs, soldiers who carried seeds in their bullet pouches, civilizations that worshipped love and practiced betrayal with equal fervor. When the first human envoys stumbled into the galactic stage, still reeking of nuclear winter and diesel fuel, the Federation offered them a seat at the war games, a test, a joke, a way to measure how quickly these hairless apes would crumble beneath the weight of their own desperation. They did not crumble. In simulations, human captains ignored objectives, scuttled their own ships to create debris shields, weaponized radiation leaks as if the void itself were a collaborator. Their soldiers laughed while bleeding. Their engineers repurposed enemy tech into grotesque hybrids, fusion drives stitched with barbed wire, drones piloted by half-mad AIs that quoted Shakespeare. The Vire, masters of flawless logic, found their telepathic networks jammed by something they could not parse: human mood. Fear that curdled into recklessness, grief that sharpened into spite, a species that treated annihilation not as a failure state, but a challenge to paint outside the lines. The Federation's analyst wrote frantic reports. Subject: Human Tactical Anomaly 227b. Hypothesis: their neural plasticity allows them to redefine victory mid-strategy. Recommended action: containment. But containment required understanding, and understanding required a question no one dared ask aloud: what happens when war becomes art and artists refuse to lay down their brushes? Chapter 1. The derelict starship groaned like a dying animal, its ribs of rusted bulkheads contracting in the cold dark. Captain Jack's Ironjaw, Malone pressed his back to a wall streaked with luminescent algae, the glow painting his scarred jawline the same corpse green as the Vire's blood. His prosthetic arm, a jagged thing he'd welded himself from the carcass of a Vire drone, thrummed in time with his pulse. The Federation called this a simulation. Malone called it a funeral with better special effects. Somewhere in the labyrinth, his squad was dying, not for real of course. The holographic arena's pain inhibitors ensured that, but the Vire didn't need claws to gut you. Their telepathic taunts slithered into minds crisp and sterile. Probability of human victory, 0.0003%. Surrender preserves dignity. Malone spat on the algae-slick floor. Dignity was a luxury for species who hadn't clawed their way out of gravity wells. A tremor shook the corridor. Malone's arm seized, the drone alloy remembering its original programming. He'd never fix the synaptic feedback, let the pain remind him what it cost to graft enemy tech onto human flesh. The tremor wasn't the ship decaying, it was the Vire closing in, their logic-perfect pincer maneuver herding his squad into the reactor core. Just like New Cairo, just like the ambush that took his arm, his platoon, and the woman who'd once laughed at his charcoal sketches of orbital sunset. Focus. The reactor core's hologram pulsed ahead, a sickly blue heart. Federation observers would expect him to fortify it, play the Sims objective, but Malone had spent 3 tours learning the universe's one rule: winning meant breaking the game, not the enemy. He unscrewed his prosthetic's index finger, revealing the smuggled singularity core, stolen from a Vire shuttle's wreckage, polished smooth by months of restless fingering. Malone to squad, he voxed, static chewing his words, fall back to grid 7, bring the party favors. No reply. Just Private Vira's breath, raw and wet, over the channel. The kid had a collapsed lung. Malone's fault. He'd ordered the flank through the methane vents. Gambling the Vire wouldn't expect a maneuver that risked frostbite. They hadn't. But Vire drones didn't feel cold. Another tremor. Closer. Malone's remaining hand found the sketchpad tucked in his armor. The paper was warped from alien humidity, the edges singed from 100 campfires. He'd drawn Krelfker earlier, the Vire admiral with his too many tentacles coiled like a noose. Art kept him sane, or maybe insane. Hard to tell when your muse was a cephalopod who thought war was calculus. The squad staggered into the core, shadows painted in bruises and battery acid. Vire leaned on Sergeant Raka, her exosuit's knee joint sparking. The war droid, CR-77, brought up the rear, its human brain core flickering behind a cracked visor. Malone didn't ask about the missing two. Some losses didn't need counting. They're rigging the core to blow, Raka rasped. Classic Vire efficiency. Malone's thumb brushed the singularity core. Cold seeped through his glove. We're not stopping them. CR-77 tilted its head, a mannerism left from the organic brain inside. Simulation objective is defense. Deviation risks disqualification. Deviation's how humans qualify. Malone tossed the core to Raka. Remember Ceres Station, the fountain, a flicker in Raka's eyes. Ceres had been a massacre. They'd survived by blowing the water reclamators, drowning the Vire in their own recycled piss. Ugly. Effective. You'll collapse the entire sim, Raka said. But her hands were already wiring the core to her plasma torch. The lights died. Vire bioluminescence flooded the room, prismatic and wrong. Krelf goes through the doorway, tentacles braided in the tactical glyphs, his kind used instead of rank pins. Malone's arm shuddered, the drone metal recognizing its creator. Your tenacity is noted. Krelfka pulsed into their minds, the telepathy stinging like iodine on a wound. But this simulation concluded 5 minutes ago. You are already dead. Malone's sketchpad was in his hand before he decided. Charcoal scraped paper as he captured the arch of Krelfka's nearest tentacle, the way the suckers puckered like dead stars. Art had been his first language, long before the fleet taught him to hate in 16 dialects. See, that's your problem, Malone said, stepping into the Vire's glow. You think war's about math. He nodded to Raka. She ignited the torch. The singularity core screamed. Reality unraveled in concentric rings. Bulkheads peeled like orange rinds. Vire drones imploded into origami crumples of metal. Krelfka's tentacles lashed. Not in pain. Vire didn't feel that. But in the first flicker of doubt, Malone kept drawing. The lines frantic now. He needed to capture the way light bent in the singularity's throat. How the Vire's perfect formation curdled into chaos. The simulation froze. Malone stood in sudden whiteness, the sketchpad still in hand. Krelfka's severed tentacle floated beside him, holographic blood crystallizing. Federation observers materialized, tall androgynous beings, with too many joints. One reached for the sketchpad. This is a trophy? The observer's translator dripped disdain. Malone tucked the pad away. It's a eulogy. The observers conferred in shivers of light. Humans had been a curiosity before this, a mid-tier species tolerated for their labor and latent aggression. Now their verdict thrummed in the air. What kind of monster turns a battlefield into a canvas? As they let him out, Malone glanced back. Krelfka was staring at the frozen heart of the singularity, his tentacles tracing equations that wouldn't resolve. Chapter 2. The Federation's interrogation chamber was a sarcophagus of light. White walls, white floor, white air so sterile it leached the color from Malone's scars. They'd let him keep the prosthetic arm. A small cruelty, he suspected. Let the Vire alloy fester against his skin. A reminder that half his body now belonged to the enemy. The observers had taken his sketchpad, though, that stung worse. Without it, his hands felt like orphaned things, twitching at his sides, craving the weight of charcoal, the whisper of paper. They asked him about New Cairo. The first time, it was a voice from the walls, genderless and glacial, described the civilian convoy incident. He'd said nothing, studying the ceiling's hexagonal recessed lights until they blurred into the starfield over Ceres Station. The second time, they projected holograms, a Vire drone's carcass smoldering in Martian sand, the jagged silhouette of a collapsed bridge, a child's shoe half buried in ash. Malone closed his eyes. The third time, they flooded the chamber with the scent of ionized copper and burnt almonds, the exact aroma of Vire blood vaporizing in a plasma storm. His throat tightened. They'd done their homework. He dreamed in fragments, not of the ambush, but of the moments between. Lyra's laughter as she balanced a ration tin on her helmet, the way her fingers smudged charcoal when she stole his sketches to label constellations. "That one's you," she'd said, pointing to a crude smudge meant to be Orion, all shoulders and bad decisions. He'd kissed her with the taste of recycled water and gun oil on his tongue, and she'd drawn a heartbeat on his wrist with her pinky finger. A ritual, a promise. The chamber's cold seeped into his bones. When the door finally hissed open, it wasn't another faceless interrogator. Krelfka hovered in the threshold, tentacles coiled beneath him like a living platform, bioluminescence dimmed to a bruised purple. Malone's prosthetic arm hummed, a subsonic frequency that made his teeth ache. "You fascinate them." Krelfka pulsed into his mind. The telepathy felt different here. Less an invasion, more a needle slipping between ribs, a specimen who weaponizes nostalgia. "They wonder is your artistry compulsion or strategy?" Malone leaned back, chair groaning. "Tell 'em it's spite. Works every time." A tentacle extended, tip grazing the prosthetic's exposed wiring. Malone didn't flinch. Let the squid fiddle with the shrapnel in his soul. "Your squad's survival rate is 37% higher than human averages," Krelfka continued. "Yet you deliberately antagonize your commanders. Why? You ever play poker, Admiral? A primitive probability game." "Exactly. You Vire count cards. Humans bluff." Malone tapped his temple. "Keep 'em guessing whether I'm genius or idiot, and they'll never see the knife coming." Krelfka's bioluminescence flickered. Amusement? Annoyance? His species didn't do facial expressions, but Malone had spent enough nights sketching tentacle formations to read the subtle curl at the tips, the way the suckers puckered when the Admiral was intrigued. They transferred him to a observation deck overlooking the Federation's War College, a gallery of horrors, really holographic battlefields frozen in time, alien cadets dissecting tactics with the clinical detachment of surgeons. Malone's victory, the black hole grenade, the sketch, loomed largest, rendered in shimmering gold light, a trophy or a warning. His squad was there, or what remained. Raka leaned against a console, her exosuit replaced by a crisp Federation uniform that looked like it'd rather choke her than be worn. Vira sat cross-legged on the floor, disassembling a sidearm with feverish hands. CR-77 stood motionless, its brain core flickering behind frosted glass. The droid hadn't spoken since the sim. Malone wondered if it dreamed, if the human brain inside still remembered sunlight. "They're benching us," Raka said as he approached. No greeting. She'd never been one for hellos. For how long? Forever. "Says we destabilize doctrinal paradigms." She smirked, jagged and joyless. Translated, "We're too ugly to fit their slideshows." Vira didn't look up. The sidearm clicked in his hands. Malone recognized the rhythm. The kid was counting bullet casings from the sim. Survivor's OCD. He'd seen it in the old trenches. Men who rebuilt landmines like clockwork toys to prove they could outwit death. CR-77 rotated its head, visor reflecting Malone's fractured image. "Your art destabilized them more than the singularity," it intoned. "They fear symbols more than weapons." Malone grunted. "Symbols are weapons." The Federation's verdict came at dusk. They piped it through the ship's comms in 7 languages, none of them human. Malone caught the gist. Effective immediately.
Human personnel are barred from joint combat exercises. Raka translated the rest under her breath, her voice sandpaper rough. Says we'll lack the moral architecture for coalition warfare. She snorted. Moral architecture? That a fancy term for letting the Vire gas civilians? Malone's prosthetic fingers twitched. He imagined unscrewing the index digit, rolling the singularity core across the floor, watching these pristine halls implode. But the core was gone, confiscated with his sketchpad. All he had left was the itch to create, and no canvas to bleed it into. They gave him back his sketchpad in the end, a gesture of goodwill, the androgynous observer said, its voice slick with condescension. Malone flipped through the pages, untouched, but sterilized. The charcoal smelled wrong, like ammonia and ozone. They'd scanned it, cataloged it, turned his grief into data. Krelfk found him in the Arboretum, a vaulted garden where Federation species grew their homeworld's flora. Humans had a plot 6 square meters of grudgingly allotted soil. Someone had planted marigolds. They sagged, starved of real sunlight. Your squad will be disbanded. Krelfk pulsed. No preamble. The Admiral's tentacles churned the air, stirring the scent of overripe alien blossoms, sickly sweet, like rotting honey. Figured. Malone crouched, brushing a marigold petal. It crumbled at his touch. They give you a medal for figuring us out. They offered. A pause. I requested your file instead. Malone's jaw tightened. Enjoy the light reading. Your psychological evaluations are contradictory. Tactical brilliance undermined by self-destructive tendencies. Loyal to subordinates, but hostile to authority. Krelfk drifted closer, bioluminescence casting wavering shadows on the glass ceiling. You are an equation that refuses to balance. Call it creative accounting. Call it a proposal. The telepathy sharpened, a scalpel probing a wound. Serve as my consultant. Help me decipher human illogic. In return, I will purge the drone alloy's synaptic backlash from your nervous system. Malone stood. The prosthetic whined, joints grinding. You wanna know our secret? It's not math, it's mood. You can't graph rage, can't code grief, yet you channel it, weaponize it. Krelfk unfurled a tentacle, revealing a holo projector. The simulation played again. Malone sketching mid-battle, the singularity's event horizon bending light like a painter's brushstroke. This is not disorder, it is composition. The Admiral left him with a data chip. No demands, no threats, just the faintest after-image of curiosity in his telepathic wake. Malone walked through the garden, down corridors that pulsed with the Federation's soulless architecture, into the docking bay where his squad loaded crates onto a rust-striped human freighter. Raka tossed him a bottle of something amber and volatile. Toast? She asked. To what? To getting fired with honors. She grinned. All teeth. Most expensive shit show the squid ever saw. They drank. The liquor tasted like turpentine and nostalgia. Vire stared at his reflection in the bottle, whispering numbers under his breath. CR-77 stood sentry, its visor reflecting the freighter's battered hull, a canvas of dents and welds, every scar a story. Malone climbed the ramp last. The freighter's engines coughed, vibrating through the deck plates. He opened his sketchpad. The first mark was always the hardest. Charcoal hovered over paper, trembling. He drew the marigolds.
Chapter 3. The asteroid field hung in the void like the scattered bones of a god. Malone's freighter drifted among them, its hull pockmarked and silent, running dark to avoid the rogue fleet's scanners. Through the viewport the rocks glimmered, jagged obsidian shards, some veined with glowing mineral deposits, others pitted with craters that yawned like screaming mouths. Malone's prosthetic arm itched, the drone alloy humming in time with the freighter's dormant engines. He'd never liked asteroids. They reminded him of teeth. Krelfk's warning played on a loop in his skull. They have learned from you. The rogue fleet, a patchwork coalition of species the Federation had pacified, was using human tactics, ambushes disguised as retreats, explosives hidden in medical pods, a sick parody of Malone's own improvisations, stripped of the ragged humanity that made them more than butchery. The Admiral's telepathic voice had trembled when he'd defected, tentacles coiled so tight they'd bled ichor. They have your fury, but not your art. Malone wasn't sure he still had art. The squad's reunion had been a silent thing, no toast this time. Raka arrived with a stolen Federation gunship, her exosuit streaked with fresh carbon scoring. Vera materialized in a smuggler's skiff, eyes hollow, fingers compulsively polishing a singularity core he'd scavenged gods knew where. CR-77 came last, its chassis scorched, brain core flickering arrhythmically. When Malone asked where it had been, the droid played a static fuzzed recording of Lyra's voice. Tell Jax the sky's still waiting. He hadn't asked again. Now they hunched over a holotable in the freighter's belly, the glow painting their faces corpse blue. Raka jabbed a finger at the asteroid field's map. Rogues are using the big ones as shields. Their command ships here buried in the thickest cluster. Classic human play. Vera muttered. Hide in plain sight. Not human. Malone said. Learned. There's a difference. CR-77 tilted its head, a gesture so achingly Lyra that Malone's breath hitched. Proposal, we collapse the cluster, use mining drones to alter asteroid trajectories, create a kinetic killbox. Raka raised an eyebrow. We ain't got mining drones. Malone's charcoal moved before he'd fully formed the thought. The sketch pad lay open, a half-finished drawing of Krelfk's tentacles morphing into tree roots. The Federation outpost on Palace 9, abandoned, but the drones'll still be there, programmable. That's a 6-hour burn, Vera said. Rogues'll see us. Not if we're dead. Malone smudged the charcoal, turning roots into debris. Raka, remember that Corvette we scuttled in the belt? The one with the leaking drive core? She grinned, sharp and feral. Radiation plume big enough to hide a fleet. They moved in the dark. The freighter's engines whispered, a sound like bones rubbing together. Malone strapped into the pilot's chair, its leather cracked and stinking of mildew. CR-77 stood at his shoulder, visor reflecting the swirling debris. You're quiet, Malone said. Processing. A pause. The droid's vocoder softened. I dreamt of water last cycle, a lake. You were there. Malone's hand froze on the controls. Lyra had drowned in a lake on Sigma-3, her dropsuit ruptured by a Ver sniper. He'd carved her name into his prosthetics alloy. Simulation glitch, he said too roughly. Perhaps. CR-77 placed a clawed hand on his shoulder. The grip was gentle, familiar. The outpost is in range. Palace 9 was a tomb. The mining drones hung in the vacuum, skeletal and still, their drills rusted. Malone floated among them in a patched EV suit, helmet light cutting through the gloom. His prosthetic arm twitched, drawn to the dormant drones, kindred wrecks, sinking to their frequency. CR-77 voxed. The droid was a shadow on the outpost's corpse-gray hull, cables snaking from its chassis into a control panel. Malone's breath fogged the visor. How long? Unclear. Their programming is lyrical. A drone stirred. Then another. Lights flickered in the dark like awakened fireflies. Malone's sketchpad floated beside him, tethered to his belt. He flipped to a fresh page, charcoal scraping as he captured the drone's reanimation, mechanical resurrection rendered in smudged urgent strokes, art as battle plan as art. Raka's voice crackled over the comms, radiation plumes peaking. Rogues took the bait. Their scouts are sniffing the Corvette's carcass. Malone guided the drones into formation. Vera, you know what to do. The kid's skiff darted into the drone swarm. A minnow among sharks. His hands danced over the controls, rewiring the drone's payloads. Not explosives, not anymore. Malone's idea turned the drones into sculptors, carved the asteroids into spirals, hooks, jagged monoliths. A labyrinth only the suicidal would enter. The rogue fleet arrived in a storm of engine fire. Their command ship loomed, a hulking hybrid of Federation tech and scavenged Ver bio armor, its hull studded with weapons like broken teeth.
Malone's freighter lurked in the radiation shadow, sensors blinded, heartbeat thudding in his ears. They're entering the cluster, Raka voxed. Malone activated the drones, chaos, curated. The drones surged, drills screaming, asteroid after asteroid split, their innards sculpted into grotesque geometries, spikes curving like ribs, fissures cut to funnel enemy ships into collision courses. The rogue fleet hesitated, their formation stuttering. Malone watched the tactical holo, mesmerized. It was New Cairo again, but inverted. Instead of collapsing a bridge, he was building a cathedral of debris. CR-77 stiffened. Alert, Vir signature detected. Krelf's ship pierced the chaos, sleek and bioluminescent, tentacle-shaped thrusters pulsing. The Admiral hailed them, telepathy bleeding through the comms in staticky bursts. They've adapted. Their hive mind is linking via the asteroid's mineral deposits. Disrupt the network, or the rogue fleet opened fire, not on the freighter, on the asteroids. Molten rock erupted, the drones disintegrated. Malone's holo dissolved into static. Vera, Raka shouted. The skiff spiraled, trailing oxygen crystals. Vera's voice was eerily calm. Core overload. 30 seconds. Malone's prosthetic arm seized, synaptic feedback screaming. He'd ordered the kid into this. Another name to carve, another ghost. Abandoned ship. Raka roared. Vera laughed. Watch the light show, Sarge. The skiff detonated. The singularity core's birth was beautiful, a darkness so absolute it seemed to suck the stars into its throat. Rogue ships veered, caught in the event horizon's pull. Krelf's vessel banked hard, trailing bioluminescent fluid. Malone's sketchpad fluttered, pages ripping free, dancing in zero-G. He grabbed one, a half-finished sketch of Krelf's tentacles, and froze. Art as weapon, weapon as art. He slapped the sketch into the comm scanner. CR-77, broadcast this on all rogue frequencies, full spectrum. The droid complied. Across the battlefield, rogue ships stuttered. The image of Krelf's tentacles, torn, bleeding, defeated, flashed on every view screen. A Vir admiral, humiliated, a symbol fractured. The hive mind buckled. Malone's freighter shuddered as the rogue command ship veered, its hull scraping an asteroid. CR-77 seized his arm, grip crushing. The drones, they're still active, redirect them. Malone's hands flew over the controls. The remaining drones dove, not for ships, but for the command in vessel's thrusters. Drills bit deep. The rogue ship listed, spewing atmosphere. Krelf's vessel fired the killing shot, a precise beam through the reactor core. Silence. The squad regrouped in the freighter's hold, the air thick with ozone and blood. Raka slumped against a bulkhead, exosuit cracked. CR-77's brain core flickered, dimming. Malone knelt beside the droid's sketchpad in hand. You with me? The droid's vocoder gurgled. Lyra, wanted you to see. Its visor lit, projecting a hologram. A lake under alien stars, water shimmering with bioluminescent plankton. Malone's breath caught. Lyra's voice, clear and unbroken. You always said you'd paint the sky, Jax. Start here. The projection died. Malone closed his eyes. When he opened them, Krelf's ship was hailing them. The Admiral's telepathy was frayed, tentative. You fight, like a composer, madness with method. Malone glanced at his sketchpad. The battlefield outside was a canvas of drifting wreckage, singularities evaporating, asteroids glowing like embers. He picked up his charcoal. Yeah, well, Encore's gonna cost you. Chapter 4. The nebula was not a place, it was a fever dream. Swirls of ionized gas throbbed in hues no human eye had names for, colors that tasted like copper and regret. Malone's freighter shuddered through the storm, shields flaring, as they brushed against tendrils of plasma that curled like the fingers of a drowning hand. Behind them, the remnants of the rogue fleet stalked, their ships scarred and rabid, engines burning the unstable gases into trails of spite. Ahead, the Elysian Shard, humanity's last capital ship, floated dead in the void, its hull gouged by the fractal claws of a Vir bioweapon. Malone's prosthetic arm twitched on the controls. The drone alloy gone cold. It knew what came next. CR-77 lay disassembled in the cargo hold. Raka had tried to salvage the droid's brain core, but the damage was fractal, creeping. Its last words had been a loop of Lyra's voice. "The sky's still waiting, Jax. The sky's still." Malone had covered it with a tarp. Some goodbyes needed shadows. Krelfk's voice slithered through the comms, telepathy warped by the nebula's song. Their flagship harvests the gas to fuel a final jump. If they reach the Federation core, yeah, party's over. Malone's charcoal moved absently, sketching the nebula's chaos on his thigh. A habit now, since the sketchpad had run out of pages. The lines were jagged, desperate. Art as autopsy. Raka limped into the cockpit, her exosuit stripped to the chest plate, one eye milky from a shrapnel kiss. She dropped into the co-pilot's seat, her breath reeking of stimulants and blood. Shields at 12%, engines are held together by the Holy Ghost, and 3 rivets. Any bright ideas? She nodded at the nebula's heart, where the gases churned darkest. Old Earth proverb, if you're gonna die, die interesting. The freighter plunged deeper. The rogue flagship materialized like a tumor. A Ver bioship grafted onto a Federation destroyer, its hull pulsing with organic artillery, spine-like cannons, membrane shields that rippled like diseased lungs. Malone's prosthetic shrieked, feedback arcing up his spine. The drone alloy remembered its makers, hated them, or maybe hated him. "They've seen us," Raka muttered. "Good." Malone activated the freighter's comm array, broadcasting on every frequency. No words, just static, shaped into a melody. Lyra's melody, the one she'd hummed while sketching orbital trajectories, her boot heels kicking absently against the bulkhead. "It's Bach," she'd said once, or Beethoven. Hell, what's the difference when you're breathing recycled farts? The rogue fleet hesitated, a crack in the hive mind. Malone's thumb hovered over the singularity core. Vera had left behind the kid's final gift, polished to a mirror sheen. "You'll fry the ship," Raka said. "Yep. And us, eventually." She laughed, a sound like glass breaking. "Should have bought that vineyard." The core ignited. My rares, reality peeled. The freighter's hull dissolved into light and shadow, the nebula's gases curdling around the singularity's maw. Malone's prosthetic arm, liquefied, drone alloy dripping like mercury, bonding with the controls. He'd wondered, sometimes, if the arm had a soul. Now it screamed, a soundless wail that vibrated in his molars. Lyra's voice. "You're not a soldier, Jax. You're a vandal with a pension." The rogue flagship fired. Bioluminescent torpedoes spiraled through the chaos, detonating against the freighter's disintegrating shields. Alarms howled. Raka gripped his shoulder, her nails drawing blood. "Make it mean something." Malone closed his eyes, let the nebula paint itself behind his lids, violet bruising into gold, tendrils of starless black. He thought of New Cairo's ash, Siri Station's drowned hulls, the marigolds he'd drawn in the Federation's garden, thought of Krelfk's tentacles tracing equations that wouldn't balance. The freighter struck the flagship's belly. Mara's silence. Malone floated in the wreckage, his EV suit patched with sealant foam that reeked of burnt almonds. The nebula's light bled through shattered viewports, painting the corpses of machines in funeral hues. Raka was gone, swallowed by the singularity's wake, or maybe just finally free. The flagship's core loomed ahead, a hybrid monstrosity, part Ver biotech, part Federation steel. Malone's remaining hand brushed the tattered sketchpad in his chest rig. 3 pages left. He'd need one. Krelfk found him in the reactor chamber. The Admiral's ship had followed the melody, slicing through the rogue fleet's underbelly. His tentacles were scorched, ichor crystallizing in the vacuum. "You are insufferably human. Took you long enough." Malone nodded at the core, its surface throbbing with bioluminescent veins. "Gotta kill it. Your tech, your problem. There is another option." Krelfk extended a tentacle, a neural interface glistening at its tip. "The core responds to art, too. Emotion. Your specialty." Malone stared. The Admiral's tentacle trembled, not from injury, from fear, from hope, from the weight of 1,000 years of flawless logic, crumbling. He plugged in. Mari. The core was alive, not in the Ver's clinical sense. It ached. Memories flooded Malone, not his own. The rogue fleet's conscripts, their homeworlds glassed by the Federation, children's faces melting under orbital strikes, the Ver's cold calculations, humanity's desperate rage, Lyra's hand on his wrist, drawing a heartbeat. You're not here to destroy, she whispered in his mind. You're here to rearrange. Malone's charcoal met the core's surface. He drew, not war, not peace, a garden, marigolds under an alien sun, roots tangled with Ver tentacles, Federation steel reforged into trellises. The core shuddered, bioluminescence softening. Krelfk's telepathy wavered. What is this? A ceasefire. The Admiral joined him. Tentacles grasped spare charcoal, clumsy at first, then sure. They sketched equations that bloomed into flowers, tactical glyphs that sprouted vines. The core's pulse slowed. The nebula held its breath. When the Federation fleet arrived, they found the flagship dormant, its hull etched with murals. Malone floated beside Krelfk, the Admiral's tentacle wrapped around his wrist. Not a restraint, an anchor. They offered Malone a medal forged from his own prosthetics alloy. He threw it into the nebula. Keep it. I'll take the retirement. The Federation's envoy blinked, too many eyes narrowing, and the Admiral, Krelfk, hovered nearby, sketching the nebula's collapse onto a floating slate. His tentacles moved with a rhythm that almost looked like joy. I am revising our doctrine. Malone took the sketchpad from his rig. The last 3 pages held the core's garden, Krelfk's tentative vines, Lyra's ghostly hand, guiding his. He tossed it to the envoy. Frame that. Better intel than your whole damn database. They designated it a biohazard. He expected nothing less. The colony was a backwater, all rust and dust and kids with eyes too old for their faces. Malone built a shack from salvaged drone parts, the walls etched with constellations only he could name. At night, he taught them to sculpt, twisting scrap metal into birds, welding reactor cores into wind chimes that sang in the toxic breeze. When the nightmares came, he'd hike to the mesa and watch the nebula's afterglow stain the horizon. Sometimes, he swore he heard Raka's laugh in the wind, Vera counting stars, CR-77's hum, harmonizing with the dunes. One day, a package arrived. No return address. Inside, a sketchpad, fresh and untainted. The first page bore a tentacled flower, signed with a Ver tactical glyph. Malone smiled. Some games were worth losing.